There are moments in the K-pop world that stop you completely. Moments where you're scrolling through your phone, minding your own business, and then something crosses your screen that genuinely makes you pause and ask, wait, is that real? Is that actually a human being? And almost every single time that happens, it involves one person, one name, ParkJimin. Now I know what some of you might be thinking. You've heard it before. You've seen the edits, you've seen the fan cams, you've seen the comments under every single video calling him ethereal, otherworldly, something out of a fantasy novel. But here's the thing, this time, it wasn't just fans saying it in the comment section. This time, it was an entire poll, an entire platform, an entire vote that was designed to answer one very specific question. Who in the K-pop world looks like a living, breathing fairy reborn into the real world? And when the results came in, nobody was surprised. But what happened after? That's where things got truly special. Let's talk about it. The poll was organized by Hire, a fan voting platform that runs themed competitions for K-pop artists. The theme this time wasn't about music. It wasn't about dance. It wasn't about chart performance or streaming numbers. It was purely, unapologetically about visual impact. The title of the voting was, and I want you to really take this in, Extraordinary Visual. Who looks like a fairy reborn? That was the actual name of this competition. And the fact that Jimin won it with the kind of dominance that he did says everything you need to know about where he stands right now in the world of visual recognition. ARMY showed up. They always show up. But there was something different about the energy around this particular vote. Because this wasn't just a casual poll on some random website. This was a competition with real stakes, real rewards, and a prize that is honestly one of the most coveted things in fan culture when it comes to celebrating your favorite artist. The winner of this poll would receive a sponsored advertisement on the Times Square Yongdongpo art canvas in Seoul, South Korea. Now, if you're not familiar with what that location means, let me paint the picture for you. Times Square Yongdongpo is one of Seoul's most prominent shopping and entertainment destinations. It's not a small, tucked-away screen on the side of some building. The art canvas, there is a large-scale digital display in one of the busiest, most visible locations in the city. Getting your favorite idol featured, there is something fans work extremely hard for. It's a public declaration. It's a statement that goes beyond social media, beyond streaming numbers, beyond any chart position. It literally puts your artist's face into the physical world of Seoul for everyone walking by to see. And now that space belongs to Jimin. Think about what that means for a second. We're not talking about a Twitter poll where someone clicks a button and moves on with their day. We're talking about a competition that translates directly into real-world visibility in one of the most iconic cities in the world. And Jimin won it as the person who best embodies the idea of a fairy reborn into human form. If that doesn't tell you something about the way the world sees ParkJimin right now, I don't know what will. But here's what I really want to dig into, because I think context matters enormously here. This moment didn't happen in a vacuum. This poll, this win, this recognition, it's happening at what might genuinely be the most powerful chapter of Jimin's entire career. And that's saying a lot, because this is a man whose career has been nothing but chapter after chapter of extraordinary moments. Let's go back just a few weeks. BTS returned. All 6 members, RM, Jin, Suga, J-Hope, V and Jungkook, completed their mandatory military service and came back to music together for the first time in years. And the world absolutely lost its mind. The reunion energy was something that the music industry hadn't felt in a very long time. There was anticipation, there was emotion, there was this collective exhale from millions of fans around the globe who had been waiting and counting down the days. And then BTS delivered. They released their album Erarang, and it debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200. Their 7th #1 album. 7th. In a career full of records, that one hit differently because it was the comeback record, the return record, the proof that the wait had been worth every single day. And right in the middle of all of that, Jimin was doing something completely historic on his own. His song Lie went viral. Now, Lie is not a new song. It was originally released in October 2016, nearly a decade ago, as part of BTS's Wings album. It was always considered one of the most artistically daring solo performances in BTS history, a dark, theatrical, emotionally complex piece that showcased a side of Jimin that left audiences genuinely stunned when it first dropped. But in April 2026, something happened on TikTok that nobody could have predicted. A choreography challenge built around Lie exploded across the platform. The clip spread everywhere. New listeners discovered it for the first time. Old fans fell in love with it all over again. And the streaming numbers started climbing in a way that caught everyone's attention. The result? Lie debuted on the Billboard Hot 100 at number 8 on the chart dated May 10th. Let that sink in. A song released in 2016 debuted in the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100 in 2026, a full decade later, because of a viral TikTok moment. That kind of longevity, that kind of staying power, you simply cannot manufacture that. It comes from a song that genuinely connects with people, performed by an artist who genuinely moves people, in a way that transcends time and trends. But the story doesn't end with Lie entering the chart at number 8. Because when that happened, something else clicked into place. Something unprecedented in K-pop history. When Lie entered the top 20, Jimin already had 4 other songs charting in that same top 20 simultaneously. Pooh at number 12, Like Crazy at number 13, Set Me Free PT2 at number 18, and Promise at number 20. 5 songs. 5 different songs from across his career, all sitting inside the top 20 of the Billboard Hot 100 at the same exact moment. No K-pop solo artist had ever done that before. Not one. Jimin is now the first K-pop solo artist in history to simultaneously chart 5 songs in the top 20 of the Billboard Hot 100. And to add to that, he also extended his own record as the K-pop male solo artist with the most entries on the Hot 100 chart, bringing his total to 38 songs charted. 38 songs. That's not a typo. That's not an exaggeration. That is the documented reality of what Jimin's catalog has achieved on the most competitive singles chart in the world. So when ARMY was voting for Jimin in a poll about extraordinary visuals and fairy-like presence, they weren't just voting out of blind devotion. They were voting for an artist who is, at this exact moment in time, operating at a level that the music industry has rarely seen. They were voting for someone whose face is as iconic as his music, whose presence, both on stage and in photographs, carries a quality that people have been struggling to put into words for years, and finally found the perfect shorthand for a fairy reborn. And that's not just a cute fan description anymore. It's a title. It's a win. It's a digital art installation going up in Seoul. Now let's talk about the visuals specifically, because this is the heart of everything. Jimin's appearance has always been one of those subjects that generates almost philosophical levels of debate among fans and non-fans alike. There's something about the combination of his features, the softness, the symmetry, the way his expressions shift between delicate and intense within fractions of a second, that doesn't register to most people as ordinary human beauty. It reads as something else. Something from a different category altogether. During the Ararang era, that quality has been amplified to a level that even longtime fans have been caught off guard by. His platinum blonde hair, which became one of the most discussed aesthetic choices of the entire year within K-pop, created a visual effect during live performances that cameras struggled to fully capture. At Tokyo Dome on April 17th and 18th, footage from the Ararang World Tour spread across every major platform within hours of the show's ending. The lighting, the choreography, the way he moved, but most of all, the way he looked, all of it combined into something that people kept describing using the same words over and over again. Ethereal, unreal, like something out of a fantasy. Those aren't descriptions that fans invented to be poetic. They're attempts to articulate something genuinely difficult to articulate. When you watch Jimin perform, there's a visual dissonance that happens in your brain. Some part of you registers that you're watching a real person do real things in a real space. And another part of you keeps insisting that the image doesn't quite fit the category of ordinary human experience. That gap, that dissonance, is what people are pointing at when they use words like fairy. It's worth noting that Jimin has talked about this himself in various ways over the years. He's spoken about the pressure of the idol visual standard, about his own complicated relationship with his appearance, about the work that goes into every stage look and every public moment. He's not someone who takes the visual aspect of his career lightly or treats it as separate from the artistry. For Jimin, everything is connected. The way he looks on stage is part of the story he's telling. The way he moves is part of the sound you're hearing. It all feeds into one another in a way that's unusually intentional, unusually conscious for an artist at any level. And that intentionality is part of what makes moments like this poll win feel different from a casual popularity contest. When the theme is, who looks like a fairy reborn, and Jimin wins, it's not just because his fans pressed a button. It's because there is something in the actual, documented visual record of his career that supports that description. Frame by frame, performance by performance, photo by photo, the evidence is there. The poll just formalized what everyone already felt. What I find particularly fascinating about this moment is the timing. Think about where we are in the bigger narrative. BTS just came back from military service. They released a #1 album. They're in the middle of one of the most anticipated world tours in years. Jimin is simultaneously breaking solo chart records at a historic pace. And in the middle of all of that, a poll about his visual impact on the world goes viral. He wins it convincingly, and as a result his face is going up on a massive digital display in Seoul. There's something poetic about all of this happening at the same time. The music, the tours, the charts, the visuals, all of it converging at once. As if 2026 decided that this was the year everything Jimin had built over the course of his career was going to arrive simultaneously. Not one thing at a time, not a slow accumulation, but all of it at once, like a wave that had been building for years finally reaching the shore. ARMY felt that. That's why the energy around the higher poll was the way it was. That's why the voting mobilization happened the way it did. People weren't just voting for a pretty face. They were voting for the totality of what Jimin represents, the artistry, the history, the records, the performances, the decade of moments that had built toward this particular chapter. And the prize, the advertisement in Yeongdongpo, became a symbol of all of that. A way of saying, look at this person. Look at what he's done. Look at what he looks like while doing it. And we're putting that on a screen in the middle of Seoul, so that even people who don't know his name yet will have a chance to stop, look up, and wonder about that face. There's also something deeply moving about the fan culture aspect of all this that I want to make sure we give proper credit to. Fan-sponsored advertisements in Korea, particularly at prestigious locations like Times Square Yeongdongpo, represent an extraordinary amount of effort, organization, and genuine love. These are not things that happen passively. Fans coordinate, fundraise, research locations, negotiate display times, create the visual content, and then vote in competitions like this one precisely because they want their favorite artist to be seen. They want the world to look up and notice. They want someone walking through Yeongdongpo on a random Tuesday to see Jimin's face on a massive screen and feel something, even if they don't know his whole story yet. That investment of time and love is part of what makes K-pop fandom so distinctive as a cultural phenomenon. And Jimin's place within that culture, as someone who consistently, reliably, repeatedly inspires that level of dedication, speaks to a connection between artist and audience that goes beyond music, beyond visuals, beyond any single category. People love Jimin because of everything at once. Because of the voice that can break your heart in 8 seconds. Because of the dancing that seems to be operating by different physical laws than the rest of the world. Because of the face that makes people reach for metaphors involving fairies and dreams, and things that don't exist in the ordinary world. Because of the vulnerability he brings to his solo work, the way songs like Promise and Lie and Who feel like actual confessions rather than just performances. Because of the way he shows up for his members, for his fans, for every stage like it might be the last one, and he wants to make sure it counts. All of that is what ARMY was voting for. All of that is what's going up on that screen in Seoul. And here's the thing about the fairy description that I keep coming back to. In mythology and folklore, fairies aren't just beautiful. They're powerful. They operate by their own rules. They create enchantment. They make the world around them strange and luminous and full of possibility. People in stories who encounter fairies are never quite the same afterward. They carry that encounter with them for the rest of their lives. That's not a bad description of what it's like to really, truly discover Jimin's artistry. To watch live for the first time. To see footage from Tokyo Dome and feel your heart do something unexpected. To listen to Promise late at night and find yourself unexpectedly crying without fully understanding why. Once you've had that experience, you don't quite go back to who you were before. Something shifts. Something gets added to the way you see and hear and feel things. And that's rare. That's genuinely, honestly rare. Not just in K-pop, not just in pop music, but in art in general. The ability to affect people that way, To create that kind of before and after in someone's experience, most artists chase it their entire career without ever quite getting there. Jimin got there, and he keeps getting deeper into it with every project, every era, every tour. So when the internet votes and says, "This person looks like a fairy reborn," what they're really saying is that they've felt it. They've had the experience. They're trying to find language for something that exists slightly beyond the reach of ordinary language, and fairy is the closest approximation they've got. Jimin won that poll because he's earned every single vote, every piece of recognition, every screen in every city that ARMY puts his face on. Not just because of how he looks, but because of what happens when you look at him in the context of everything he's created, everything he's given, everything he's put into the world. And now, somewhere in Yeongdongpo, in a shopping center in Seoul, there's going to be a digital display with his face. People are going to walk past it. Some of them will know exactly who he is and feel that familiar rush of warmth and pride. Some of them will see it for the first time and feel something they can't quite name. Some of them will stop and take a photo. Some of them will look it up later. Some of them will discover a song, and then another song, and then before they know it, they'll be watching live footage from Tokyo Dome at 2 in the morning, wondering how a human being can actually move like that, actually look like that, actually exist like that. And maybe one of those people will end up in a comment section somewhere, typing in words that feel imprecise but true. Words like ethereal. Words like unreal. Words like, I don't know how to explain it, but watching him feels like encountering something out of a fairy tale. And when that happens, the circle will be complete. Because that's exactly what started all of this. That's the question the poll was asking, and that's the answer Jimin has been giving the world for years. One performance at a time. One song at a time. One moment at a time. They called him a living fairy. And then his face went up in Seoul. And the world kept watching, and kept listening, and kept falling under the same spell that ARMY has known about for a long time. This is just the part where everyone else catches up. If you made it to the end of this video, I genuinely want to say thank you. This stuff matters. Talking about artistry and why it moves us. Talking about the moments that feel bigger than just a chart position or a poll result. That's why this channel exists. And Jimin gives us so much material to work with because he is genuinely one of the most interesting, most layered, most visually and musically extraordinary artists working right now. If you're new here, welcome. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, because we are deep in the most exciting chapter of BTS history, and it's only getting more intense from here. And if you've been here, you already know. Drop a comment and tell me, what was the moment Jimin's visuals first made you stop everything and just stare? I want to know. I'll see you in the next one.